Have you ever thought of a nation's constitution as more than just a rule book? What if it's actually a blueprint? Today we're going to look at how India's constitution was designed as a master plan to build an educated nation literally from the ground up.
It's a pretty interesting question, right? How does a big, formal legal document actually influence what happens in a classroom? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack. We'll explore the architectural plan inside the Constitution for India's entire education system.
You know, every great blueprint has to start with a vision, a big idea of what you're actually trying to build. And for the Indian Constitution, that vision is laid out right at the very beginning, in the preamble. This is the why behind everything else.
These 4 words, they're so powerful. Justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. They're like the guiding stars for the whole project. The people who framed the Constitution, they truly believe that education was the #1 tool to make these incredible ideals a reality for every single citizen. So you can think of the preamble as the mission statement. It's the soul of the Constitution, declaring its core purpose. And it really sets the stage perfectly. It tells us that education isn't just about learning to read and write. It's about creating a society that's just and free and equal. Okay, so if the preamble is the vision, how do you actually build it? Well, you start with a solid foundation. And in our blueprint, that's the fundamental rights. These aren't just suggestions. Nope, they are non-negotiable, legally enforceable guarantees for every single person. And within this foundation, we can see 4 main pillars. Think of these as the main supports holding the whole structure up. Each one plays a really specific, critical role in creating a protective bubble around education. And what's really cool is how these pillars work together. The right to equality, that means the classroom doors have to be open to everyone, no exceptions. Freedom of speech, that protects the free flow of ideas inside the classroom. And the right against exploitation, that makes sure kids are actually in the classroom and not stuck in a factory. It all fits. But among these pillars, one is an absolute game changer. Article 21A, the right to education. This isn't just a supporting right. It's the cornerstone of the whole educational foundation. It is, without a doubt, the most direct and powerful guarantee of them all. And here is its very specific, very powerful mandate. The Constitution doesn't just vaguely say education for all. No, it says that for every single child between the ages of 6 and 14, the state has a legal duty to provide free and compulsory education. That is a huge, huge commitment. But this right didn't just appear overnight. The journey to make education a fundamental right was a long and deliberate process. It all came together with the 86th Amendment back in 2002. It was a conscious decision to elevate education to one of the most protected rights in the entire country. Okay, so we've got the vision, we've got the foundation, but how do you build upwards from there? Well, that's where the directive principles of state policy come in. You can think of these as the scaffolding and the construction manual for the government, guiding them on how to keep building the educational structure. Now, what's the difference here? This is really crucial to understand. Fundamental rights are what the state cannot take away from you. You can go to court to enforce them. Directive principles, on the other hand, are what the state should be trying to do. They're a moral and political guidebook for how to govern well. Now, a couple of these directives really stand out for education. Article 45 pushes the state to focus on early childhood care, because, learning starts way before age 6. And then Article 51AH guides the whole philosophy of education, calling for a modern, rational way of learning. So what is this scientific temper? It's such a fantastic idea to put in a constitution. It basically means the whole point of education isn't just to memorize a bunch of facts. It's to create citizens who think for themselves, who ask questions, and who are driven by logic and a desire to make society better.
So we've got the vision, the foundation, and the scaffolding. But a blueprint is pretty useless without the builders, right? This is where the Constitution turns its focus to the citizens themselves, spelling out their active role through what are called fundamental duties.
And in Article 51AK, we find a duty that's all about education. This is so important because it frames learning not just as a right you get from the state, but as a shared responsibility, a group project that everyone has to chip in on. And just listen to how direct this is. It places a clear moral responsibility on every parent and guardian. And notice that age group again, 6 to 14 years. It perfectly mirrors the fundamental right in Article 21A. It creates this beautiful link between the state's job and the family's responsibility.
So now let's take a step back and see how all these different pieces, the vision, the foundation, the scaffolding, and the builders all fit together. because they aren't separate ideas. They are totally interlocking parts of one big, cohesive system designed for a very specific reason.
This really breaks it down. The preamble sets the ultimate goal. The fundamental rights give you that guaranteed solid foundation. The directive principles are the guidelines for the ongoing construction. And the fundamental duties, well, they call on the builders, the citizens, to get to work and do their part.
And what's the whole point? What is this final building supposed to look like? At the end of the day, the answer is so clear. It's to use education as the main tool for building an inclusive and egalitarian society. A society where absolutely everyone has an equal chance to succeed.
So we end with this thought. The blueprint is there. It's ambitious, it's detailed, and it's crystal clear. It gives us the plans for a nation built on the foundation of education. And the final question it leaves for all of us is a pretty profound one. How well are we, the builders of today, actually following that plan?